I'd like to call the regular city council meeting for Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome to everyone, both here and on TV. Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, sir.
Seeing none, I'll move the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. First item up is presentations, proclamations, and acknowledgments, which we have none this evening, so item 3 is completed. We'll move to public comment. Item 4, anyone wishing to speak to the council on any of the subjects not part of our meeting agenda may do so. Please to come forward to the podium, state your name and your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. The podium is open. Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Raul Estrada. My address is 8302 143rd Street West. One of the comments I want to talk about is the proposal for the meta facility. And there's a lot of questions I have, and I'm sure a lot of the people from the area have as well. Part of that would be environmental impact that nobody seems to be discussing. Environmental impact, the land it sits on, has been a dispute with Native American tribes for quite some time, and a lot of that is founded on the fact that the area sat on a ammunition manufacturing site. There's also issues of why the Meta went through the last few years under an assumed name instead of being transparent with local residents and community members. Excuse me. And so that brings up a lot of concerns for a lot of people in the area. One of the other things I want to point out is we have a huge population in Dakota County that is primarily ethnic. We have Somalis, Ethiopians, Pakistanis that, with this new knowledge, have decided to start moving people home. And a lot of it is founded on what's going on with that area. There are a lot of concerns as to why there is such a focus right now from standing President Joe Biden to other officials who have never seen Rosemont as a focal point. Why suddenly now? What is the draw? What is the attention that brings everybody's attention to Rosemont, a place that has only been a blip on the map since the beginning of Minnesota? Suddenly, it's a focal point. And why? And again, one of the things that we look at is why is this meta proposal focused on this land in the area? There are other safe areas that don't pose environmental hazards, like the Iron Range. Why not there? Why this area? And I guess that's one thing I'd like, I hope more people in the area would start asking some of these questions. Why this area? What is the focus? Why is there such attention being drawn to this area? Is it the resources? Is it the resources that we have between Rochester and Rosemont? Because we know that's where Minnesota's financial resources are. Why is that facility proposed for that site? And again, the environmental impact, what's going to happen? It's been said that there's nothing nefarious going on, but yet all the things were done in secret under an assumed name. Why? So, I mean, as far as a community member, I just have so many questions, and I'm guessing a lot of other people do. And I guess that's one of the things I want to point out is before it goes any further, I hope and pray everybody starts to ask a lot of these important questions. Because this affects not just the area, not just Rosemont, not just Dakota County, but the entire state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for those in the audience, currently, the council and staff is under a non-disclosure agreement, so the use of any company particular name is not known to us at this time. Yes, we have read the paper and we are aware of Meta and Facebook engaging in a private land transaction with the University of Minnesota. Other than that, I don't think we have anything further to speak to that. As true of any of comments, we take comments this evening, and if there is any responses, they'll be forthcoming at the next meeting. Anyone else like to come before the council?
I'm Michael Pekarik, 13572 Delwood Way, Rosemount. One question I've got, well, actually I got a couple questions on that particular parcel. First one is, in our most recent city newsletter, there is talk about water resources in Rosemount being strained and watering restrictions on. This metadata center will use a tremendous amount of water resources, and I see nowhere where that's been addressed. What's that going to do to our water, to what we've got, what citizens have to use? Seems more consideration is being given to a big business on the water resources, than to citizens. We live here. We can't just relocate that easily. Meta is not in this area right now. They could relocate easy. They can find better property. The other part is the financing of that. Is there going to be any tax increment financing that's going to cut into the property taxes? You know, that us property owners are going to have to pick that up for them. The other question is the Umore Park development, seeing as that was an ammunition plant and there's problems with water quality there. In Coates, they had to put in new pipe. They had to close all the wells that people had there. So how is that being addressed? What about contamination of the soil? I've not seen any mitigation for that at all at this point. So those are the questions I've got on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to come before council?
I would like to say that,
Excuse me, name and address, please.
oh, I'm sorry, my name is Kathy Pritchard, and I live at 15703 Crystal Path. I
ahead.
recently purchased an electric vehicle, and I just wanted to share my disappointment with the city of Rosemount with your charging stations. I've already discussed this with the city council, and I know you have plans to get more charging stations in for electric vehicles. But even on my drive here, I mean, I drove by a Tesla. I mean, I do think that there is a need for that. I also find it kind of interesting that you want to do you proposed this Meta facility coming into Rosemount when it seems like they're pushing a very hard left when it comes to their democratic agenda. And I just wanted to state for the record, I would consider myself an independent. But I do see what Meta has done, and I've read their website, and I just don't like how it seems like they're coming forward to go against the First Amendment when it comes to squashing what people have to say that are Republicans. I did a little investigation on some facts that I thought were pretty interesting when I started getting into it, and I just want to give you some dates of timelines that have happened. Gymnast LLC was formed to purchase the land for Meta on November 18th, 2021. That was a brand new company that was just formed. Just a week and a half later, on November 30th, 2021, President Biden visits Rosemount, Minnesota, on the exact land that Meta wants to buy. On May 1st, Biden came here again, 2022, May 1st. Biden meets with the University of Minnesota, which just happens to be the owners and the sellers of the land that Meta plans to buy. I actually reached out to Anthony I don't know how to say his last name. It might be Nemchek.
Nemchek, yes.
And I said I was a little concerned because I did not know that they were going to switch it from agriculture to business for Meta. I didn't know about that. I was following it pretty closely, and I was pretty surprised that happened. I asked Anthony if he could please send me the publication for the notice for that. I couldn't find it anywhere. I searched and searched and searched. I want to tell you what Anthony said to me. I want to give you his exact email. Good afternoon. I connected with the city clerk. She had been searching for the publication as well as I. I don't believe the newspaper has a very user-friendly system for accessing old notices because it seemed like you have concerns that no public notice was not given for this project. I've attached the affidavit of publication from the newspaper, and he did give me the notification with Gymnast as the LLC, which I found was interesting. So then I searched Gymnast LLC on the website, going back to my timeline again. I did find a published article on March 31st, 2023 with Gymnast. The notice was the proposed sale to Meta. On that date, which is interesting to me that that date was listed, just 3 short days after that date, guess what? President Biden comes to Minnesota a 3rd time, and he visits the Fridley, Minnesota Cummings Power Generation Facility, who sells power generation equipment. I don't know why. I believe because maybe they want to sell it to Meta. I'm not really sure. But what concerns me is Biden seems like he really has his hand in this. And I just don't feel like I would be proud to live in Rosemount anymore if this happens, because I want freedoms to be available for everybody. I did a little more research to see, because I felt like I was a little deceived. According to the U.S. Office of Special Counsel, there is something called the Hatch Act. And according to the Hatch Act, it seems like some violations are already occurring or will occur in the future that would go against our First Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before council?
Hello. My name is Karen Miller, and my address is 17985 Jacquard Path, Lakeville, Minnesota. I am a Dakota County resident, but what brought me here tonight is I started looking into the Umore Park property, the extensive documentation about the plans for it and the vision for it, and I came across a statement of the vision for it that will impact not just Rosemount, but also surrounding communities in the entire state. It says, the planning and execution of the vision will change the face of Dakota County, the greater Twin Cities region, and the state of Minnesota for generations. That statement was just astounding to me. Its scope, it's incredibly profound, it's incredibly deep. So the decisions you're making about this property and all of its development and use, it won't just impact Rosemount, it'll impact Lakeville and communities throughout the Twin Cities and the state. And I, for one, as a resident of Dakota County, want to know more of what is this vision? How do they want to change the face of Dakota County? Because I think you have something very special here in Rosemount with the incredible natural resources and the land and the people, So I'd want to know more about that, because it seems like a pretty bold statement. I read a little bit more about the the Umore Park property, and it said they state their goal is to create a, quote, compact, complete, and connected community with walkable neighborhoods where people could work and play in the same community in which they live. And to me, that sounds a lot like what we've been starting to hear about of this 15-minute city concept. And if you add to that a major data surveillance center, you really have the recipe, the potential for a recipe for freedom-reducing monitoring and control. Add to that the fact that the Meta or Facebook's acquiring of the land was done in large part in secrecy, hidden from the public eye. That's extremely concerning. You know, this is the public's, this is a people's land, the people's government, the people's tax money. All of this should be open and transparent to the people so that we can know about this, we can find out more about this and give more input. So I just encourage you to really dig deeply into, it sounds like there's multiple facets of the Umore Park property development as well as the Meta acquisition of the land, to dig deeply into the tribal land issue, to dig deeply into the toxic potential EPA issues, to dig deeply into its implication on housing and people group populations, and also to the resources of the area. And then to keep the research that you're finding open and accountable and transparent to the people so that they have a chance to weigh in and give impact. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, ma'am? Karen, is it, ma'am? Karen. If you could leave the sources of some of the information that you were speaking to. One of the things I am concerned is, as you do some research, there are things that are on the web that are not current as it relates to Umore, and just want to make sure that as we research and follow up on that, we would. Appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to come before council? Going once? Twice? All right, we'll consider public comment closed. Response to public comment item 5, we do not have anything from the previous meetings. We will look forward to our next meeting if there's anything here that that we can specifically respond to. The other, I would ask as residents, simply watch the process as it goes through. There are many steps involved in any of these projects that go through, and certainly bring your concerns as we have public hearings as it's brought forward. So with that, that completes item number 5. We'll move on to the consent agenda, item 6. On the consent agenda, we have bills listing, minutes of September 5th, regular and work session proceedings, the donation acceptance from Rosemont Beyond the Yellow, acceptance from Shoppers at Cub Foods, request by Maplewood Development for approval of the Amber Fields 12th edition final plat, request for the 11th edition final plat, donation acceptance from the City of Minnesota Heights, a request by Florence Omogho for a minor subdivision, letter of support for a TED grant with Dakota County, declaration of surplus property, Parks and Recreation, Transportation, Economic Development, Infrastructure grant, and an authorization letter to support for NLC board appointment. With that, are any of these items willing to be pulled by the council?
Nope.
No. Seeing none, can I receive a motion in the affirmative for the consent agenda?
I'll move the consent agenda.
I'll second.
A motion by Klimple, second by Fresky. Roll, please.
Not used to that. We're missing our city clerk tonight. My apologies, Mayor. Essler.
Aye.
Klimple.
Aye.
Weisensell.
Aye.
Fresky.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved 4-0. With that, we have public hearings of 7, which we have none this evening. Unfinished business, item 8, which we have none. And bringing up new business, the establishing of the preliminary 2024 budget and levy. Mr. Martin, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Excited to be here tonight, really on behalf of your entire city staff, to take us to the next step. That showed up kind of silly on there. Oh, maybe the folks in the cable crew can flip that onto the screens here. There it goes. Sorry about my odd font there. I'm not sure what happened as it transferred over. But we're here tonight to establish the preliminary levy and budget for the city of Rosemount for 2024. And so this is really the end of a quite lengthy process that the city council and city staff engage with. Excuse me, not really the end. It's a major step. What we're doing tonight, and folks that have been paying attention kind of over the years understand that what we do tonight is we really establish the ceiling, the highest level at which the city's tax levy can be. And then between now and December, residents are notified of their taxes and their estimated city taxes for 2024. Gives them a chance to respond to the city council, provide any feedback at a truth and taxation meeting in December. And then at that meeting in December, then the city council establishes its final budget. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk a little bit about history, where we've been, how we got here, the process that the city staff went through with the city council to really receive feedback and guidance on the budget. We'll go kind of budget by budget from all the departments within the city and the items that are included inside the budget. And then we'll ask for you folks to make a final recommendation on the establishment of the preliminary levy and budget. So really headlines from this budget that we've kind of done this in previous years just to give council and residents really some kind of talking points and some things to be aware of as they kind of, either plug in or plug out of city business. We continue to see record-breaking growth in our value of our new construction. So this is driven by really all sectors of growth. This is historic housing growth in the city of Rosemount, industrial, retail, and service growth as well. So $138 million in new construction value was added in 2023 for 2024 payable. That's just as a comparable, 2019 we had $47 million in new construction. So really kind of historic numbers is the word that I guess I keep using on some of the development that we've seen and the growth that we've seen. And that helps a growing city. It helps our budget really remain as kind of under some boundaries as it possibly can. You still see a budget increase, you still see a levy increase, but what we're going to talk about here is kind of how that development and how that growth has really allowed us to minimize that impact on residents. And so our tax capacity valuation increased by almost 11%. That's a pretty large number. We've seen similar numbers to that in previous years, but that's a large number. That new construction valuation saved homeowners $55 on their taxes. And so without that $138 million in new construction, a tax increase on a median valued home for the city would be $168. For reference, in 2023, $32 was saved. So for a resident to feel a $55 savings or an avoidance of a tax increase of $55 thanks to that valuation and that new construction growth, we think is a good data point to take a look at. And then another interesting point here too, we often run the numbers of what would a median valued home see if their valuation didn't increase and didn't respond to the growth that we're seeing in the housing market in general. Your taxes inside this budget, if your house value stayed the same, would actually decrease by $7. So really what we're doing here, and the point of that talking point really is to show you that city staff and city council's direction, we're really living inside the means of the city's growth. We're responding to the growth, we're responding to the needs inside the growth, and you'll see that with staffing requests in here. But the growth that we're seeing is really allowing us to live kind of within those means. So again, getting into the direct overview of that budget impact, the 2024 budget has an increase of 10.21% to the operating budget. To fund that operating budget increase results in a 7.92% increase to the tax levy. That's reduced down to what the council saw in September, down 1.04% from what the council saw in September, as a reflection of the council's direction to really sharpen that pencil and get as detailed as we can. Again, realizing that there are still factors within the budget that are still unknown between now and final establishment of the budget in December. So our hope always is that this budget and this number can change and be modified between September and December. Those two main factors really are what the final cost of living increase would be for city staff. So this is wage increases to city staff. We're in active union negotiations with all 4 of the city's unions. As we aim to wrap those up by December, we can know what that final number is and really hone in on wage numbers. And as the council has known from previous conversations, the city's budget is 73% wages. We are a people business. What we provide is service, police officers, firefighters, snowplow drivers, etc. So much of this budget is driven on people and salaries and benefits. And so we have a placeholder for what salary numbers could look like based on what we've seen from surrounding market communities and what they've offered to their unions. And then we also have a placeholder in here for our benefits and for our health insurance and dental insurance and the benefits we provide to city staff. We're in active negotiations via our insurance broker with our medical provider. Don't have a final number yet on what those medical costs will be. And so that's a number that's going to get locked in between now and December, which will allow us hopefully to pull that number down a little bit more. So really wanted to hit on that for a little bit, just to kind of let folks know that, here tonight we've got to set the ceiling. There needs to be a little bit of capacity within that number to allow us to then hone in on those final two buckets that I just described. The second major thing that's happening next year, of course, is our PDPW campus project, and so that results in a 4.5% debt levy increase. And that's a conversation that hopefully folks are not surprised by. We've been having for a long time, and this notion that we were able to phase in the impact of that debt issuance over a 4-year period. So residents, this is the first year of a 4-year period that they'll see that 4.5%, generally speaking, but more focused on that $50 number. So $50 tax increase in 2024, and then each of the next 3 years thereafter, so a total of 4 years, to phase in what is a $200 tax levy increase to fund the Public Works and Police campus. So those two numbers combined lead to that $114 number of a tax increase that's being proposed inside of this budget for next year on a median valued home. So $64 is funding the city's operations, $50 is funding that debt issuance that we talked about before. So there you see in the smaller font there, median valued home paid $1,228 in city taxes in 2023. They'll pay $1,342 in 2024 as proposed here in this budget, which, using I think our partners at the school district often use kind of the dollars per month parlance, as they talk through it. So, $10 a month to the average homeowner is the property tax increase that's being shown here tonight. Generally, just on the process, council knows this all too well. You've been living this really since February, but probably from February until April or May, city staff receives all of its data and all of its reports from the county. We dig in deep as a staff to really plow into those numbers and have each department head develop a proposal for their department. Some of those numbers that I've shown before, I'm not going to repeat them. Again, that number from 2019, I don't think I mentioned that one yet, but we had $47 million in new construction value in 19. To see that number jump to 138 is a result of a pretty substantial increase in development here in the city. So department heads, like I said, submit those budget requests. The administrative services director and I sit down with each department head and really line by line, truly through their budget, what is this for, what is this for, what is this for, in prioritizing initiatives and really trying to live within the means that the city council has given us, and really some internal budget goals that we established to really retain the quality of life, retain the high level of services that our city provides, respond to the growth that the city council has approved and has shown us that is in the vision of the community, but still respecting obviously the taxpayer's dollar. And then starting here this summer, we've been presenting the draft budget to the city council in multiple work sessions, June, August, September here, and then bringing us to tonight to establish the ceiling. A little bit of a look back here. This is a data point that we like to often use, kind of looking at growth in operations from 15 to 24, growth in value from 15 to 23. I don't have 24 numbers yet on that, to show that our valuation growth has significantly outpaced our operational growth. And so I think that's an important data point to hone in on, that again, that notion of trying to really live within our means and respond to the growth and the valuation growth that has been driven by the growth of the community and the changes in the overall strength of the community. And then we often quantify this, this is a previous council request, kind of a cost per resident, cost per household. And so that shows you 10 years of a progression of a cost per resident or a cost per household. Really over 10 years to increase, $162 per resident or $424 per household, just to show how that's kind of been a steady growth, again, responding to the growth in the community and the pressures that really that puts on city staff and city operations. Looking back here at the just kind of a bar chart to pictorially indicate what I just showed, been averaging a 2.22% levy growth and a 2.83% budget growth. So again, really kind of that steady pressure that you see in any growing community around us. Tax capacity value numbers as well, showing, the average annual growth of 7.84%. We show here in this light green line Flint Hills tax capacity. That's been talked about by previous city councils to know that a good amount of the city's tax capacity is associated with Flint Hills. And so the notion of what were to happen to Flint Hills were to have a change in operations, et cetera, just understanding, what sort of an impact that would have on the community. And they certainly are an incredibly important player, averaging, between 9 and 12%, 13% of the city's tax capacity. But it also shows that we have, strength across the entire community. So now we'll go really line by line through, not line by line, budget by budget through each really department here, and then show some pictorial representations of how those have changed as well. City Council's budget has a very small increase of almost $2,900. This is the second year of responding to the City Council's request to reallocate funds out of the City Council's budget into the other budgets that more directly replicate or show what those funds are actually for. So if residents will recall, the City Council's budget used to include things that were a bit more focused on the overall city operations. We've pulled those out and put those into administration and other departments like that. So really this is just focused in on City Council's direct initiatives. So that's why you see that odd kind of bounce down here of the bar chart. We went back a couple of years just to replicate what the bar chart would have looked like had we not just made this change, and so tried to show a bar chart that doesn't look quite so weird. The Admin Services Department sees a 9.6% increase, or about $219,000. Again, this is the main recipient of a lot of those council offloaded dollars. And so that's why it's kind of an odd thing here. This is the combination of the formerly known administration and finance budgets, now admin services, and then you'll see on your budget we have sub-department or divisions, I should say, underneath admin services, things like human resources, communications, et cetera. Harder to pictorially show this here in the next slide, but we kind of backed into that. Biggest things here inside of admin services to make council aware of, or just remind the public. A big ticket item here is the city's transition to Oracle to really operate so many of our financial management systems and some HR systems as well. It's a significant software package, but it's going to really revolutionize city staff operations and really help us streamline and grow in that regard. From a staffing standpoint, here's our first request of a staff across a few departments that you'll see here tonight. This is an FTE communications specialist, and so part of the reorganization of admin services was we've created the communication manager position. To support that position, staff is requesting a communications specialist, and so allowing the communications manager to really hone in on the ability to do that engagement out in the community, and the communications specialist can do a bit more of the traditional communications work of social media communication, press releases, newsletter crafting, et cetera. So that's a mid-year hire in June to just minimize budget impact so we don't have to have such a significant hit to the budget. There's admin services, again, showing that change back in 2023, but that'll start to become more of a normal-looking bar chart here as we get years of history. Community development, 7.42% increase. We did a mid-year hire of a building inspector last year, so we have the impact of the full year of the building inspector hitting us in 2024. I say last year, 2023 is when that gentleman started, but I think you track me there. And then we do continue to add some software that allows the city staff to be a bit more nimble out in the field, reviewing plans on tablets, not using paper, to be able to be in their vehicle, looking at plans, and staying a bit more nimble that way. So really pretty flat in community development over the last many years, 2.77% average annual growth. Police department is our largest increase for next year, 12.42%. I think we've talked about this quite a bit, and certainly I think residents continue to tell us in community surveys and just in general understanding of expectations of what your government does for you, it's to keep people safe, right? And so every city budget that you'll see, I can safely say across the metro is that the police department is going to be the largest budget. We understand that is the critical thing that we do. And so what you'll see here is a number of really important initiatives that we're really confident in. We've talked to the City Council quite a bit about this. More conversation yet to come. Chief Dahlstrom is coming to a work session again in October to really get in deep with the City Council and understand, kind of the long-term hiring trajectory of what the police department continues to look at. I think residents that have been really paying attention to the budget over many years will know that the city council has really given staff the directive that if development continues to go on the pattern that it will go, we likely anticipate at least one police officer hired every year, and that's really required to stay ahead of a lot of metrics that exist in the police service, which is one officer per every 1.25 or 1.2 thousand residents, or 1,000 residents per 1.2 officer. I got that backwards. So a bit more than one officer per 1,000. And so for us to stay ahead of that with sworn officers, let alone administrative staff that aren't per se, licensed to carry type officers or sworn officers, we have to continue growing. And so you'll see that in here, both sworn additions and then non-sworn is kind of the terminology for the traditional police officer versus somebody who does other support. So sorry to go down that rabbit hole there. So one item that we continue to work through is the change in our criminal prosecution firm with the retirement of our previous firm. Second year of switching to a new firm. They've been fantastic to work with, but they have brought a new level of service to them that has really ramped up what the police officers are receiving for really guidance on new laws, support for administration and the chief. It's been really fantastic. That comes with a cost, and so we enter into a retainer with that criminal prosecution firm, and this is a reflection of what that rate cap that we've agreed to is based on our experience with that firm. Chief Dahlstrom is really innovative on how we utilize technology to stay ahead of policy changes, and so one of those items is called Lexapol that allows us to really understand the policy changes that come down from the state and federal government and that help educate staff that are out in the field every day performing as police officers, and so changes to Lexapol software and the implementation of that. And then Dakota 911, the dispatch center over in Empire, fees have gone up a little bit there, so there's a $29,000 line item in the budget that accounts for that general kind of quote-unquote software and services type item. Getting into staffing requests, we have a request for a full-time employee of an administrative sergeant starting next year. We've had this position in the past. As we have transitioned into the deputy chief model, we removed it for a while. It's now become apparent that it really is a critical position to try to kind of roll back into the agency. And it really removes a lot of administrative pressure on the police chief and the deputy chief. Just the litany of meetings that they go to, tracking administrative changes, again, those policies, tracking, this is our largest department of staff, so HR issues, things of that nature. So it's really, like you say there in the title, administrative. Training is the other one that is really a critical task. So use of force, firearms, et cetera. Administrative sergeant would really take a big burden off of the chief and deputy chief. Fleet management, we have all of our vehicles are fleet vehicles, which is tracking things like oil changes and new tires and all those things. It's a big job. So that's a general overview of the need for the administrative sergeant. Crime analyst is a new position that we've got in the budget to be hired mid-year, again, as a cost-saving measure. This is I don't know if I'd call it new, but a relatively new initiative inside policing to really professionalize and modernize policing. So these folks do kind of what you would assume a crime analyst does. Not only are they reviewing data, they're understanding mapping and working with the GIS department to map out crime trends or data trends. They're also tracking the reports and kind of new releases that come from other police agencies about warrants and crime trends to watch out for, whether it's catalytic converters or carjackings and some of those things that our team is tracking right now and doing their very best to keep up with, but to have a dedicated person that's monitoring those streams, that is then feeding that to officers, administrative staff to say, hey, I just heard this from the FBI, be on the lookout for this. That's really kind of what that person can do. Supporting investigation is a big piece of this, let alone, the public outreach being a part of that, helping to educate when we get questions from homeowners about, has this been happening in my community? Crime analysts can run a report and help communicate and message that. And then we do have, sticking with the trend, we do have a full-time police officer in this budget as well. Again, really, like I mentioned before, that steady pressure to stay in front of population growth, to keep a police force that we can staff 24/7, 365, regardless of childbirth or injuries or anything like that. So we do have one officer in this budget. So a total of 3 bodies. One is a mid-year hire with a crime analyst. I should call out here briefly too, folks to pay attention to the state government. I have likely heard of the public safety grant dollars that came. So we received public safety funding dollars from the state of Minnesota, about $1.2 million in public safety funds that we can use at our discretion to either purchase equipment or staff based on conversations with council, chief, the fire chief. What we've presented to the city councils that we would use these funds in an iterative process over the next few years to allow us to staff up the police department with having a minimized impact on the city budget. And so really to have a budget, kind of rewinding all the way back to the first slide, that $65 budget increase is really pretty close to what we had last year. It was about $60. It was the median valued home levy increase last year. To hire, we have 6 employees inside this budget that we're working through right now in this presentation. To achieve that, with us in the, under the umbrella of a 7.9% budget increase or a pretty average levy increase, is I think something that the city council should be proud of. And part of that is the really kind of innovative use of the public safety dollars that we're really feathering into this budget to minimize this impact that otherwise would have gone directly to the tax levy. And so if these numbers would have hit the tax levy, your tax levy would have been to an untenable amount. It would have been far too high for us to responsibly bring it in front of you as a city staff. And so using those dollars to do these kind of really purposeful and critical hires, I think is something that we're certainly pleased to support or to present to you and ask for your support of. And we'll talk about that kind of over the years here, and we'll talk about it in the fire slide in a couple of moments. But we're excited to really kind of build out a package or a use of those funds that's really kind of iterative over the next couple of years that we think is smarter than maybe just buying a piece of equipment, that instead it allows us to really provide an increased level of service to the residents that we wouldn't otherwise be able to kind of reasonably afford, but that really we believe and we know that the city really requires. So long deep dive on police. Sorry, Chief, but it's his favorite part of the year always when we get to take a scalpel out to his budget. But really, it's really good stuff in there, and so I just felt it was important to spend some time on that. So thanks for that. Really steady growth in the police department, averaging 4.4% annually. And so even though these are large numbers, they are a purposeful step up. And I don't think, in my professional opinion, historically, there's nothing alarming here in the police department budget growth. Fire, again, continue to push the budget in the fire department to get ready for a transition to a partially full-time fire department. And so the first item here is a $60,000 really placeholder inside the budget. We need to engage in a longer conversation with Chief Schroeder, the city council, about what it looks like inside the fire department budget to start getting us ready for a full-time fire department. But I think residents know that our really fantastic fire department is all paid on call, and including the chief, the fire chief, receives a very small stipend to do his job, as does the assistant chief, battalion chiefs, and down the line. And so to get ready for that, we're proposing to use some of those public safety fund dollars that I just talked about to infuse some money into this budget to allow us to get ready for that transition to full-time fire. And so that's that placeholder right in there, and we'll have a conversation with the chief and the council on what exactly that first step is into full-time fire next year, but we wanted to really get that into the budget at this point to start the conversation. And then some of the normal things we've been doing the last couple of years, we continue to work through our 3-year program of buying additional bunker gear for the employees. This is the suits that they wear. That's the leading cause of carcinogens and cancer amongst firefighters is them putting on a set of gear that isn't appropriately clean and then going to another call. And so getting them a second set of gear continues to be a really important push. And then Chief Dahlstrom in the police department uses the Guardian tracking system. Chief Schroeder has used that in his professional day job as well. And so we're proposing, and Chief Schroeder has brought this to our attention as well, to use Guardian tracking in fire as well as police has been using it. And so this is both performance management but also a training tracking system. And it's been really effective in the police department, and we're excited to roll it out in the fire department. We're working through a 3-year cycle of getting all firefighters licensed as EMTs. And so the first phase of officers getting that licensure is a $6,000 spend. and then working on adding psychological testing for all of our new hires. It's a $6,000 line item, but really the stresses of the job have shown for retention that we really got to get that set into our process as well. So you'll see the last 3 years or so, we've really been pushing the fire department budget. Again, it's still the smallest budget in the city by a significant margin, but been pushing that budget to get ready for the transition to full-time fire. And so 6.03% average annual growth, but you're certainly starting to see us building for the future. So when we do make that switch, it's not such a significant change. Public Works will work through their sub-budgets here. First is government buildings, a 4.6% increase. Here is another employee inside this budget. So here's a full-time facilities and fleet employee. This says here, hired October 1st. Public Works Director Egger will be able to decide there's an October 1 hire and a January 1 hire in another department. Based on the needs of the agency, we can swap those out. But the point being is we have 2 Public Works employees, one starting on January 1, one budgeted for October 1, and we'll respond to the needs of as we may decide that posting. But this person would help with our growing fleet of facilities and our growing fleet of fleet and growing fleet of cars. And so it's quite a process to manage the fleet that we have, both from a mechanic standpoint and then, just simple as, changing light bulbs and ripping up carpet and all those types of things that happen at facilities and broken door hardware and key card systems that don't work, et cetera. So an important hire there. Janitorial services, just a market adjustment that continues to happen in our private or our subcontracted janitorial services. Utility costs, just like homeowners are being hit with that, so is the city. So some increases there. Let's see, okay, I think I chatted through that. Oh, no, I'm sorry, this is fleet maintenance. So the fleet maintenance does own some piece of that fleet and facilities person as well. So there's some shared costs there. And then as we're growing our fleet and we continue to have more fleet vehicles, we continue to have more needs for tools and parts to maintain those fleet vehicles. Street maintenance, here's that other FTE, which right now is shown as January 1. In the normal kind of understanding, a street maintenance person, this is a plow driver starting January 1. They, of course, do a lot more than that. Street work happens all year round. They do other things in the parks and utilities as well to help out as a team. But by and large, this would be an FTE dedicated to streets. This is just reflective of our growth of lane miles and our growth in the community. Our hard winters we've been having, things of that nature. So we're overdue for a new streets maintenance employee to really stay ahead of both, again, snow safety in the winter, but then also just maintaining, patching, pot filling, et cetera, of streets maintenance or streets throughout the year. To that end, additional funds for crack, seal, and seal coat program. With more lane miles and with aging streets, we continue to spend more money on sealing those streets and crack sealing those streets. We've added a second vehicle for our brine pre-treatment system. So this is that, folks have seen it, we pre-treat the more heavily trafficked roads with a brine application that really allows the salt to stick harder to it when the snow and ice starts coming, and that's been a really beneficial program for us. So a bit more funds for that. Parks maintenance, some of the similar things you've seen on previous years, a 4.1% increase here. Again, we continue to try to battle and handle the emerald ash borer program, responding to that, taking away boulevard trees that have EAB. We're getting near the end of the ash trees in the community and having them removed, in publicly owned ash trees, I should say, but still need a bit more funds to fund ash tree removal. We keep adding new parks, which means new weed control and fertilizer in new parks. And we keep adding new ball fields, and so we continue to need more field dry and chalk for our new fields, namely at Umore and Flint Hills, as we understand how those fields operate and how their needs can be met by within field dry and chalk. So kind of maybe hard to see with all the colors there. That's all 4 public works budgets that I just went through, kind of overlaid on top of each other across all 4, averaging just about 2% average annual growth, ramping up in recent years, but certainly a pretty modest increase across a 10-year span there. Last but not least is Parks and Rec, 7.06% increase. Really, largely, you're not going to see much here. It's a staff increase and changes in staff and our part-time employees that we ramp up as we roll out new parks programs. We continue to see increased utility costs at all of our facilities. We did have a little bit of a reduction for HVAC maintenance in a few of our facilities as we've gotten out ahead of that. Steeple Center has had some work there. So a little bit of a reduction in that line item that we wanted to call out, but not a whole lot to mention in parks. And then there's the bar graph for parks, 3.53% average annual growth. I think that's my last slide, beyond council just announcing that date that I had mentioned before for the truth and taxation hearing. So after folks will receive their mailer with their proposed city taxes based on what you established tonight, December 5th, 2023, I will do a very similar replica of this presentation. And then we would open the floor at that time to any comments from residents based on the tax statements that they receive. I will say that we would really appreciate hearing from residents before then. Give us a phone call after you get your letter from the county. Ms. Malika or I would be happy to talk with you and chat through it and help folks understand any changes that might be proposed or that might be impacting their form that they receive in the mail. But with that, Mayor, happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. You can take a breath now.
Sure.
A lot of information to digest and all of that. I'll open it up to council after just a note of appreciation to the staff and everything they've done and will continue to do as we get to December. Again, this is the preliminary levy, so this is the maximum amount the levy will be. With that, I'll open up to any comments.
Yep, I've got two. So one is just a question. You know, we talk a lot about 70+% of our budget is around employee benefits and salaries. For those watching here or online, how many employees do we have?
It's probably
Sorry to put you on the
trick
spot.
question. No, 102. We used to be right about 99. We've hired a couple, so I feel pretty okay saying 102, 103
Okay.
full-time. But then, add in temporary staff, which of course don't receive benefits, but are part of like that park and rec budget, certainly. And then we have we're authorized to have up to 50 paid on-call firefighters, which we certainly would count. So the staff can crest up to, in the close to 200 or the low 200s, but full-time staff, benefit earning staff is about 102.
Okay. And then my second question is, you mentioned early on that we're still in the negotiation period for 4 of our unions. Can you speak a little bit about historically what those annual increases have been and the drivers behind it?
Sure. Really, they've been in the, I would say, my history here is, 8 years, or 8 budget years, I suppose, looking back even past that. They've been anywhere from the mid ones, 1.5, 1.9%, to 3s and 3 1/4, 3.5, in some of the bigger inflationary years. Been below that, certainly I know in 2008, I think there may have been a 1% year or 0.5% year. But, in the public sector, without a situation of having like benefits, end of year bonuses, things of that nature, that's really all a staff member is going to see is whatever that cost of living increase is going to be. And so it's really kind of an inflationary tied number, certainly an outlier year of last year. Some of our, market comparables were maybe getting in the 5s and 6%, based on like some pretty wild inflation in 2022, 2023. But I think the comparables that we've been seeing and what we've historically done, it's been in those 3-ish% type numbers. But yeah, the driver is really market competitiveness. I mean, we get a list. We have what we see as our comparable size cities, and so they're the cities you can imagine that are in the 18 to 30,000. Is kind of who we might compete with from a salary. We're probably not keeping up with salaries of a Lakeville or a Burnsville or an Egan. But, like you saw in the compensation study, we have a list of maybe 25 cities that are seen as our comparables. The unions have those same cities and maybe some that they might disagree with and add in. And so we'll kind of share comparables of what we know that other cities have settled on. And then also just reflect on what we need to do to stay competitive on wages, And I think, one of the ones we talked a lot about already, but I'll talk about again, is police and the challenge to hire police. And so really to be an employer of choice, both from a salary standpoint, a benefit standpoint, to get officers and to get anybody even to respond to our now hiring signs in the police department, which is going okay, but not great. We don't have huge numbers. So yeah, that's a long answer on that maybe, but it really reflective of market competitiveness.
And then my final question, and you may not have the answer, but I'm curious, one of the things we always look at is how do our levy increases compare to neighboring communities? Do you have anything that you can share for how we rank across the county or just general area?
Yeah, We're right in the range, is what I'm being told. I have a meeting on Friday where we're all gonna, all the administrators will meet and try to goat each other into saying what your levy increase is. I mean, now it's all public, at least for us, but, so we'll talk on Friday. We meet every month and share numbers like that. There are a lot of 7, 8, 9% out there in the county right now. Be happy to report back more on that, certainly in December when we know. So our 7.9% number for the general fund is going to be very average. There'll be a few lower than us, but there'll be a number that I've heard of that are higher than us. I think Farmington was just in the paper at 12%. When you add in our debt levy, getting us to 12.9, I think 12.5, that puts us on the higher end because of that 4.5% with the PW campus. But again, as I've been saying to council kind of ad nauseum, but we're really seeing it as a bifurcation of, like, we have an operational levy of 7.9, we have a debt levy that we can't do anything about. It's a mortgage that we took on that's 4.5. So 7.9 over here is actually very similar to others, I think, is what I'll be able to report back to you. Adding the 4.5 puts us on the higher side. There's no doubt about that. Luckily, that's for 4 years. That'll go away. It'll be built into the process. Then we'll get back to just being our normal operating levy. But yeah, that's an answer for you.
Thank you.
And I noticed, there is a significant technology investment, obviously, in admin, and we're all aware of it. And I live it in my day job, but I was wondering if you could speak for our residents at home about the necessity for that Oracle upgrade and what that really does bring to the city staff.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. We've been operating with a really old software package that hasn't received new versions for a number of years. And then we've been presented in recent years with an ability to upgrade that software package for a pretty high number, a 6-figure number, but that still would take us to a service delivery from that software that just wouldn't meet modern day needs of what an accounting department would expect. And then let alone from a department head standpoint and the staff standpoint and being able to log in and, like, what's the current status of my budget and where should I bill this, invoice that I got for, a bucket of pens, like we can't even tell really very immediate where our budgets are currently at. And so the ability to produce reports, the ability to kind of have data at our fingertips will really be maximized there. From an HR standpoint, we really haven't had any ability to digitize that process in the past. We have band-aided it with our Laserfiche program, but, like, this will allow us to have a much more technologically advanced, onboarding process, job recruitment process. The employee or the candidate is filling out his or her own information to build their own portfolio, can log in and change your declarations on a W-2 or your payroll, et cetera. So just a lot of those types of features that we've never had before.
Great. And then secondly, on Public Works, do you have a statistic around the increase in average, like the increase in lane mileage year over year?
Oh,
that we've
yeah.
been.
Do you know that off the top of your head?
Is Mr.
We did that in our, we may have had
Yeah,
our presentation on that. We can get
Yeah.
back to you on that, but since we've added a streets maintenance person, there's been a surprising number of lane miles added, but we can get back to you on that. But
Great.
I think, folks could just, kind of think about it as you drive around town and think about what are the new roads that have all been built, let alone Amber Fields, but then Connemara punching east of Akron, and we haven't added plow drivers since, I've been here to do any of those new roads. So there's a lot.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Romero.
Yep, so mine is more of a comment and I guess maybe a compliment. I think as we went into this process, one of the things we recognized is, a year ago, School District 196 had a referendum. It passed 2-1, pretty overwhelmingly in the city of Rosemount. So we knew, and again, we have nothing to do with that. There's 3 components of, everybody understands, or if you don't, there's 3 components of the property taxes. There's the city, there's the county, and the school district. And going into this, we knew that the school district, the levy was going to be substantial. It was going to hit next year. So we knew we were going to be facing that. So, right out of the gate, we asked you guys to be prudent in your budget because, again, we can't control it. And again, our residents voted overwhelmingly for that. But we knew, you get your tax statement and you get your assessment and you see a pretty big number. Even though a large chunk of that is the school district, we knew we wanted to be pretty careful. So I think we started with that. You guys, came, to the first conversation, I think being pretty prudent. We kind of challenged and pushed you guys to get lower, and you guys continued to do that. I think, you said something earlier, you retain the quality of life and the services for our residents. I think you guys do that at a very high level. I think that's always going to be the balance. We want to always, I've also heard the term make normal happen. I think the city staff makes normal happen at a very high level on an ongoing basis. That's what we hear from residents. The day-to-day stuff really seems to get good marks. So you guys will continue to do that. And with that, it does cost more. It costs more to retain those great staff that we have, and pay market to retain them. So I would just, I guess, say, big thanks on behalf of, the council, myself, the council, the residents, that you guys have managed the checkbook and the budget this year, I think really well. So thanks for that.
Thank you so much.
Just a couple thoughts, a little bit of perspective, at least. The one that really hits me is, again, the Oracle, where we have been trying for many years to get to that point of upgrading our technology. And fortunately, I think a lot of cities, part of that is a consortium that we belong to with Logis, finally making their movement forward, and it's helping us make that decision easier, more cost effective, and I'm finally glad to see some of that happening, as we go forward. And certainly, I think we've heard from residents. We challenge all these type of services, what we deliver, and residents still want the services that they're getting. And, they don't want to have 2 days of snow plowing. They want, our current metric right now is to get the streets plowed within a day of a snowfall. And we're kind of up against those kind of metrics now where we have to be adding people on staff. And that's true whether it's public works. We've obviously continued to see that in the area of the police. And so we've always been kind of going down that road of looking today and then into the future. And I think residents should recognize now we're seeing that same type of thoughtfulness go into how do we get to our fire department, to that day crew. And so a lot of things that are, like I say, a lot of balls in the air that are just being dealt with. I think from council's perspective, I think we're always challenging. We appreciate the staff looking at those budgets and recognizing, there's people on staff, certainly all of us, that live here in Rosemont, so we're paying for those taxes as well. So again, thank you and appreciate that time and effort that goes into this. And we got this touch point, we got between now and December to see if there's any ability to tweak that, and hopefully we don't find any major hiccups in here either, because we do have some things that aren't finalized.
Do right, yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
If there's nothing else, then we will consider the recommended motion. Is there anyone who wants to move that forward?
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution setting the preliminary 2024 general fund operating budget, the preliminary 2024 CIP budgets, the preliminary 2024 insurance budget, the preliminary 2024 Port Authority operating levy, and the preliminary 2023
That is correct, yep. That
Levy?
backdate that, yeah.
and a budget hearing date of December 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. at City Hall.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Essler, second by Fresky. Roll, please.
Klimpel,
Aye.
Weisenthal,
Aye.
Fresky,
Aye.
Essler.
Aye.
And that passes, our 9A passes 4-0. That completes that action item. Move on now to announcements. Just before we jump into that, one note of appreciation. We did have a lot of people here earlier this evening. There's a few residents still here that made it through that budget presentation.
Well, don't make it sound so bad.
No, I'm appreciative that they hung out this long, because normally sometimes we're just preaching to nobody shows up. So I wish the rest would have stayed a little longer, but apparently they seem to be in favor of the preliminary budget that we've put out here. So with that, I'll turn it over back to Administrator Martin for city staff updates.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Certainly haven't heard enough from me tonight. But I don't have a ton on staff updates. Just looking at Dan, I don't know if you wanted to give a report. We had a fantastic food truck fest. Maybe Dan should stand up and receive his due credence for running a fantastic event, and then I don't have to talk.
Just overview, it was a great event. It was the kind of weather that you just hope and pray for all year, which we have no control of. But when it does happen like that, it's really adds to the event. We had several food trucks that actually sold out of their food. We had Brick Oven Pizza, which was their first year being able to work it into their schedule to be at our event. They sold 519 pizzas and sold out at about 8:30. And so that was really good to see that they had such good business. And we've had real good response from a lot of other trucks that we've talked to. We sent out a survey on Monday morning afterwards and just asked for their just real quick feedback, and everyone was real positive. They were all happy. They liked the event. A couple of them said, let's do another one in the spring. And so, we're looking at doing another big spring event. It's not going to look just like the Food Truck Fest, but we will do something festive and community oriented. So, but it was a good event, and we're glad to be able to put that on for the residents.
All righty. Any reports or comments from any of the council before I do our announcements? Anything from anyone? I would just add a wonderful weekend on Saturday. If anybody thought there was nothing happening in Rosemont, I know it started with the Rosemont Area Arts Council Country Fair. It was followed by the Rosemont High School Marching Band Festival, 22 bands from multiple states here, and then to finish up with the Food Truck Festival. Just a great time in Rosemont.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'll also throw in that we had a softball tournament up at Erickson Park. So I had several people that morning, Saturday morning, come to Central Park thinking it was Erickson Park from out of the community, looking for directions on how to get to Erickson Park. And so there was a softball tournament. I know we had a bunch of football games out at Flint Hills and at Shannon. So this was one of those weekends where if you were looking for something to do, you didn't have to go very far.
Yep.
It's a good weekend.
Great to be in Rosemont. So,
Mayor, I think we've got Chief Dahlstrom waving at me in the back too, if you wouldn't mind hearing.
he would like to step forward. Certainly,
When
welcome.
your boss calls to be safe for speaking, you step up, right?
Yep.
So I did want to say also on Saturday, prior to the food truck event and prior to the band event, we had several officers that participated in the third annual Corey Slifko Memorial Softball Tournament. So that was down in Farmington, and it's primarily led by a core group of individuals. One of those individuals is Sergeant Jeremiah Simonson with our department, who continues to go into the community and help all kinds of organizations raise money. He's led our Pink Patch Project. He got a Distinguished Service Award from the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association last year, as you guys know. So proud and happy to announce that they raised more than $50,000 at this year's event on Saturday, which brings their 3-year total close to $150,000. So it's been a incredible fundraising effort for primarily to organizations that go towards mental health service or public safety, whether that's fire, EMS, police, and getting those getting people help early on. As you know, that the mental health claims and as a result of public safety professions have been up in the last several years significantly. So a great initiative there. And then he just notified me today that I got a notification from Representative Angie Craig that he is going to be receiving a Distinguished Service Award in October from her office and being honored as one of the public safety champions. And so he's going to be representing the Rosemont Police Department at that event. So I'll be sure to document that well, but pretty good news to get today. So.
Awesome.
Thank you for sharing. Excellent. So with that completes 10A on city staff updates, and we'll look to 10B upcoming community calendar. We'll start out with, we have a Utility Commission regular meeting, September 25th, beginning at 5:30 here at City Hall. Parks and Recs regular committee meeting the same day from 7 to 8, also here at City Hall. Our farmers market continues on Tuesday, September 26th, from 1 to 5 in the Rosemont Community Center parking lot. Planning Commission that evening at 6:30 to 7:30 here at the City Hall. The Youth Commissioners will meet on September 27th, Wednesday, from 3:45 to 4:45, I believe, at the Steeple Center. Next City Council work session will be October 3rd, 2023, from 5 to 6 p.m., and followed by the City Council meeting from 7 to 8 p.m. And with that, is there any other additions, comments, business to come before City Council? I'm seeing none, and so with that, I'll move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.